A torch was thrown in the abyss, where there is darkness and nothing else. And at the bottom was fate. There was a book written in the 14th century by Dante Alighieri, which was named Inferno. It examined the depths of hell and its every stages. Could you guess what was at the bottom of the pit? Pride, greed, wrath. No, it was betrayal. Griffith's treachery towards the crown was punished within the deepest and most ancient of dungeons of the kingdom. He broke the bond of trust and cooperation towards the princess and the king, those that would be responsible of giving him a title and a castle. Down there, where no one goes or ever looks, that is where the leader of mercenaries was tortured. In the places where no one watches us, and we are most inclined to inflict horrors upon others and the world. Humans are dangerous when left alone and unchecked. Their wildest fantasies can take shape in the form of violence, torment and sexual abuse. And why shouldn't they enact these horrid instincts? Why shouldn't they kill when hungry, dominate when sexually deprived, or unnecessarily harm when psychologically disturbed? Well, all those acts of selfishness and cynicism are condemned by others in society. That's the basis of Homo sapiens that allows us to live in peace and harmony. People are torn creatures, psychologically, and it has been scientifically proven. There are these characters in us that want different things at different times and often do not communicate with each other. We intrinsically know that we are that way. Otherwise, we wouldn't say the sentence such as, "I wasn't myself." Then who else could you be when you weren't yourself? Similar to how the body regulates its functions through heart, lungs, veins, so does the psyche through a diverse set of personalities and desires. But for such a complex being to coexist with another one of the sort, they have to learn to trust each other and build a bond. If that chain of protection doesn't exist, then the one next to you might as well be planning your demise. And the world is too harsh for us to be constantly looking over our shoulders. Hence why betrayal is at the bottom of Dante's Inferno. That's also why Griffith is sent to the darkest dungeon of the kingdom. But it was actually a chain of reaction that started between Guts and Griffith. When Guts left the Band of the Hawk, and Griffith was the first to feel betrayal. Berserk's world is a very harsh fictional world, which requires people to help each other in order to thrive. And if bonds are severed, then nothing else matters anymore, and hell can be unleashed upon the world. As it very well happened with the eclipse. People might wonder why we didn't see much of Griffith's torture. Because it didn't matter. It was already bound to happen. What mattered was the psychological consequences on the human being that endured the procedure. It was the struggle, the shame, the exhaustion, the disability of movement, the impotence that was important. But before we get further into the video, please consider subscribing and please tell me in the comments if you would be interested in an ebook. The brain of man is an organ that deals with information. The accumulation and transmission of information in this sense is a characteristic of all living organisms. Deprived of information, the brain does not function normally. Prisoners cease to care about their utterances, dress and cleanliness. They become dulled, apathetic and depressed. Isolation is maybe the most common method of punishment. Again, going back to the fact that humans need each other for various reasons. Imagine how overstimulated our brains are nowadays with everything around us. That's how Griffith was as well during his reign as a leader of the most famous mercenary band in Berserk's world. He fought on the battlefield, rode a powerful horse, coordinated attacks of castles, took care of the morale of his troops, manipulated his way up the social ladder. Such people raise their adrenaline levels to such a degree that their baseline is at the same height as when a normal person is exercising, and that is their baseline, resting level. Such people constantly search for something to excite them, otherwise they are bored. David Goggins is a real-world example because he was often distressed as a child when he had to deal with his abusive father or tried to ignore the racial slurs and threats that were hurled at him. Look at Goggins since then. Navy SEAL and constantly breaking some incredible records. Now, in the blink of an eye, strip that person of any sensation other than the pure physical agony. Leave him alone in the darkness, in an empty room. Let him brood over his existence. Let him call upon the devil. Most people deteriorate markedly after about 72 hours without sleep. The highest functions suffer first. The capacity to cope with complex and changing situations without making mistakes or errors in judgment is often the first to go. This is followed by deterioration of dress, speech, behavior, dullness, emotional liability, defects of recent memory, disorientation, hallucinations, delusions, thinking disturbances. Scientists have tried to analyze for abnormalities in the function of organs and blood circulation during sleep deprivation, but to no avail. Nothing seems out of the ordinary, yet brain function is heavily impaired. It remains a mystery why we need sleep. Griffith's wounds burned during the first months of him trying to peacefully sleep. Few modern people can imagine the agony of tortured prisoners, but then after weeks or months, Griffith only feels numbness in his body. If anyone has experienced a surgery and a time after that, you know the strangeness of lying somewhere else and not at home, and the anxiety that comes from the pain and unfamiliarity. No one can quite tell if Griffith really saw the God Hand before they descended in the world. It could be that in this dark moment in Griffith's life he unlocked a link to them just briefly. Or it could be that he was just hallucinating as a narrative sign of foreshadowing. The deficiencies we have been talking about is named the brain syndrome, where the brain organically deteriorates, meaning no direct trauma was inflicted to it. To this syndrome count the people that are ill, injured or depleted. However, it must be said that different people and their bodies react differently to the effects of torture and exhaustion. Under prison isolation, as this has been carried out by Russian and Eastern European state police, most prisoners developed symptoms of disorganization within 3 to 6 weeks. But some have been known to endure this for many months. Griffith was praised by his torturer for his endurance of torment. He might have become delirious in the span of a whole year, but Griffith integrated himself fairly well back into the band of the mercenaries. No signs of madness were observed in his actions, which is a testament of his character. Now the philosophical dilemma after being freed is, do I want to continue living like that? Can't walk, can't talk, can't lift a sword, can't have children. You must keep in mind the pride of the man. It is the Lucifer effect, similar to how one of the brightest of God's angels fell from grace. So did Griffith experience the worst degrading year of his life. Griffith's story is a hero story, and the hero needs to climb a hierarchy of events in order to ascend to his goal. In this case, it is Griffith's castle. This figure always goes through, firstly, being a fool and childish, to then developing some skill and competence, to then be faced by struggle. Exactly the struggle is what defines the hero, so much so that if the hero can't endure the struggle, he either perishes or becomes the villain. We needn't forget, however, that Berserk is not about Griffith. It is about Guts' rage and vengeance that deals with Griffith's decisions. The alchemists of the past worked in a very symbolic manner and considered the materia prima to be the source of which everything, matter or spirit, emerged. Something that leads us back towards that beginning, which is in a sense what we could become as people, be it heroes or villains. The alchemists deemed to be Mercury, the god, planet and the metal. It is often depicted in the upper parts of illustrations where it is highest and most important. Mercury, and I am taking this information from Jordan Peterson's interpretations. Mercury, the messenger from the realm of the divine, guide of the souls to the underworld, and the bringer of good fortune, is the epitome of chaos in the form of a sphere, or an egg, one might say. He is the image of us trying to reach something more than we are, and for that process to happen, we need to step into the realm of chaos, disorder, and pain with courage and resilience. Think about when you have to open a brief or have to go to a date. You don't really know what's going to happen next, and your body prepares itself with adrenaline. Well, you might have already made the connection that the Behelit is the alchemist's Mercury. Interestingly enough, blood was used as a key ingredient in alchemy in order to create the Philosopher's Stone that could turn materials into gold and grant immortality, as is the case with the Behelit during the eclipse. Berserk's ultimate question of causality is if people's actions matter compared to the materia prima they are made out of. Was Griffith born to become one of the God Hand through torture, or oppositely, do actions matter when faced by the essence of the world, which is most often pain and struggle? That is the theme of the main character, Guts. Because to reach your potential, you have to work for it, to act. Maybe Griffith caused his own doom through his ambitious, possessive and bloody deeds. Yet his potential was realized by being reincarnated as a demon, which enabled him to later in the manga build a castle. One thing we can say for sure: torture can only bring out the evil in people. It merely deforms them and makes them lose sense of hope and faith in the good of the world. Most of all, it pushes the tortured to abandon his trust in human bonds, which leads to them appearing to be discardable, the very definition of the eclipse. As we talked about, that world of dog eats dog will not last very long. In other words, Berserk shows that despite misfortune, people can overcome their personal hell and reach new heights. All of the misfortune is only the bitter half of the tale of existence, without taking note of the heroic element of redemption or the nobility of the human spirit requiring a certain responsibility to shoulder. We ignore that addition to the story at our peril, because life is so difficult that losing sight of the heroic part of existence could cost us everything.